The Sacrifice, short science fiction horror. Stacy walked inside the cafe at the end of the block. She could smell the delicious aroma of pastry and cakes wafting in the air. She smiled as she saw her cheery friend Emma waving her hands, beckoning to her to come join the table. The cafe was a charming, upbeat place with trendy music playing constantly in the background. Besides Emma were her two colleagues, Ming and Carly, perpetually smiling and laughing. They were very pretty and very well dressed. Stacy felt out of place, as usual, wearing her old office attire. She sat down, they casually greeted her, and then they continued indulging in conversation. The waiter asked for an order. An artificial intelligence contained within a human body, an android. He was unusually handsome and had an unnatural smile. "Coffee, please," said Stacy. "That would be 30 credits." An augmented reality interface opened up and hung in the air. "All right," said Stacy, and waved her hand over his open palm. The interface showed a transaction confirmed, and the waiter smiled and went away. The coffee was amazing, and for a moment she almost forgot about how miserable her job was and how much she hated her boss. She almost forgot about how she was lagging behind on her rent and bills. How she couldn't afford to take care of Noodles, her sick dog who was wasting away due to a recent diagnosis of a rare tumor. Stacy felt anxious and depressed. Emma noticed Stacy and asked her how her day was. "It was good," she replied. The words were dry and insincere. The girls made conversation about how awesome and fulfilling their lives were, and Stacy couldn't relate to them, as usual. "Congratulations, Emma," said one of the girls. Emma brandished her diamond ring on one of her fingers. "I owe it all to the Sacrifice. He would have never noticed me without the money for surgery and weight loss," Emma explained. Another girl talked about how she was able to start a successful company and become a millionaire. The last one talked about how she bought her dream house in the richest neighborhood. This was something else that greatly bothered Emma, their sudden and incredible luck and success. She knew the sinister secret behind it. Everyone in the world was aware of the price. The Sacrifice really changed my life. I can't imagine living like before. The entire evening the women only conversed about how the Sacrifice had solved all their problems and how they were happier than ever. Stacy felt a pang of envy as they continued to converse about how amazing their life was. She started to hang out less frequently with them over time. Stacy walked home one late evening, exhausted. Her neighborhood was riddled with crime and theft, so she secured multiple locks on her door. Her apartment was out of order, stuffy, and claustrophobic. There were notices for bills unpaid left on the table, piling up. Back in the old world, she was a successful and rich lawyer, and here she was almost poor. The system here didn't hold value for degrees or ability. This world demanded sacrifice. Her dog Noodles happily rushed into the room, whimpering and limping, but still wagging his tail loyally. Stacy pet him for a while, and felt guilt and sorrow overwhelm her as she noticed his condition worsen. He would be okay if she only could afford his treatments. Stacy looked in the mirror. Tears streamed down her face. She was unhappy and powerless. It was time. She opened up the virtual interface by performing a gesture. Her hands trembled as she pointed her finger towards the "Log out of simulation" button. A wave of darkness washed over her, and she awoke in a bright, sterile room. The walls were white. The lights were blinding and intense. She was naked, bound to the surgical table, her arms and legs outstretched. She looked at her malnourished, sickly body. Wires and machines were connected to her head and passed through her flesh and bones all along her body. She was so thin and starved, her bones protruded from her skeleton skin, along with the wires that had torn through the flesh. There were ghastly surgeries done to her body, stitches, incisions, and scars all over. She was missing one of her arms. It was amputated at the elbow, a clean stump. A previous sacrifice that had run its course. No human could have biologically survived in that state without death or horrible complications. Something or someone was prolonging her unnatural existence. Then she felt her mind being violated by something that was not of this world, or certainly not human. The system has analyzed your psyche. Your desires are known to us. Are you prepared to sacrifice? The sinister voice echoed through her mind. It came from one of the wires that was bored inside her brain and skull. "Yes, please. Just give me what I want and get me out of here," she said, and she spat out blood. She wheezed with every breath. It was so difficult to breathe with all the machines and wires inside her. Her body was in agonizing pain. "Your demands will be arranged as soon as we collect the payment. Half of your lung, 1 kidney, your ovaries, left knee, and right femur will be extracted." "Just take it already and let me go back," screamed Stacy. Fear began to well up inside her as she braced herself for what would happen next. Holes in the wall appeared, and what appeared to be large hands, skinless, impossibly large arms with their muscles and bones exposed, started to inch their way outside. The fleshy arms were holding surgical machines of some kind, and began to make their way towards her body. Stacy could feel her heart pound in her chest. The machines whirred with shrill, dissonant sounds as they made contact with her flesh, and she screamed as they performed the extraction. Stacy awoke in her room, healthy, as if it were all a dream. She gestured in the air, and it opened up her virtual interface. In her bank account were 10 million credits. She smiled. She could live comfortably for decades, quit her job, move to a better neighborhood, pay her rent, or perhaps even travel the world. Most importantly, she could pay for the treatment of her dog, Noodles. Noodles came into the room, and she embraced him hard. Then she heard the sinister voice echo within her head. "Thank you for your sacrifice. Please return any time you desire." You have one new message. I can't believe I'm writing this. Why am I doing this? My therapist said it would be good for me to put your story out there. Yeah. Typing this just makes me feel worse about it. I guess I should quit my waffling and get on with it. About 2 years ago, my friend Mark and I were at our local cafe. It was nice. We were just talking. Then Mark's phone pings. Now, Mark was the kind of guy to rush into his phone the second he got a message, so of course he picks it up. He says to me, it's an image, and from an unknown number. Already that's kind of creepy, but when he saw the image, he went white. He gulped and showed me the picture. It was a photo of him, sitting in his chair, in his apartment. Now, again, that's creepy enough on its own, but something was really wrong. In the photo, Mark's face was bloody and mangled. Then I noticed in the background was a shadow. I couldn't make it out very well, but it looked like a tall man with loose skin around his neck and an old-fashioned camera where his head should have been. There was a timestamp, too. July 7th, 2018, at 18:47 p.m. That was just as confusing, as that was 5 hours from then. Mark tossed a 5-pound note on the table and ran home. I didn't stop him. Maybe I should have. I checked in on him later, around 10 minutes to 7. I let myself in and shouted out his name. No answer. I ran into the living area and stopped. Mark was sitting on his chair motionless, his face bloody and mangled. I felt like I was going to throw up. I turned around and ran to his bedroom. I threw up and looked out the window. On the roof of the building next door was the tall, pale man. He did indeed have an old-fashioned camera for a head and loose skin around his neck. He pulled the skin over the camera and leapt from building to building until he was out of sight. I broke down and cried on the floor. The Butcher. In a small village, there was a butcher that everyone liked and knew. The people would always go buy their meat there, and they were always satisfied with it. One day there was a big storm, and the butcher's meat delivery was retarded. Since the next day was usually where everyone rushed to his shop to buy his meat, the butcher started panicking. Suddenly, a man that he'd never seen in the village before entered his shop, drunk. He explained that he was a traveler, and he needed to eat, now. He became more aggressive, and the butcher's patience grew thinner. He took the traveler by the shoulders and pitted him into the meat grinder. He didn't know what to do with it, but then a terrible idea came to him. That was the meat he was going to serve tomorrow. The next day, people rushed to him, asking for meat. He served them the drunk traveler, and people came back to the shop, telling him how good it was. To this day, the butcher, an old man now, still lives with the atrocious secret, and the villagers still recall how good the meat was that day.